Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Hey, welcome to Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 43, and it is Thursday, May 30th, 2024. If you're just joining the show for the first time, glad to have you here. If you saw a previous episode or some other content and you found your way here, also glad to see you back. So with that being said, if you want to get the article feeds and see everything that we cover, make sure to go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com, that's the website, and you'll be able to find all the information there. Also, if you need a snack or a drink to get you through the content, make sure you run and go grab that real quick before we get into the content. But for everybody else, let's hop on over my screen and start talking about the articles. All right, so first article here, ransomware attack on Seattle Public Library knocks out online systems. A ransomware attack on the Seattle Public Library has brought services to a halt, knocking out the wireless network, computers for staff and patrons, and the entire online catalog. The incident began on Saturday. The organization said in a statement on Monday afternoon. The library has 27 different branches serving nearly 800,000 residents. It also goes on to say Seattle Public Library joins several city and county library systems around the world as targets of ransomware gangs, which use the demand for ebooks and critical services as a wedge to make organizations pay. Last fall, ransomware gangs destroyed the systems of the British Library, one of the world's largest and the National Library of the United Kingdom. The Toronto Public Library spent months recovering from a ransomware attack last fall that they called a quote-unquote crime scene. So with this, first of all, it is kind of this interesting area because obviously traditionally libraries had books everywhere. But as we've seen over the last several years, 10, 20 years, whatever it's been, there's been, a decent amount of time there, probably even longer than that actually. But libraries are starting to digitize a lot of the things that they offer. Certainly most libraries still have books. I don't think there's any completely digital library that has a physical presence. Obviously, there's things like Kindle and those kinds of things, but that's kind of different. And so we are seeing libraries start to rely on the digital footprint and then seeing attackers go after libraries too, which is interesting because it's not like a normal kind of business where they are putting out iPhones or whatever it is, right? But it's interesting to see those kinds of attacks happen. Now, one thing that I want to also point out and have you kind of think about, and this is not just about libraries, but what happens in a business when critical systems go down? How do you react to that? Does that completely shut down your operations? For instance, if this was a library that was completely digital, completely online, or completely digital in any format, and the systems are facing ransomware, now all of a sudden your patrons or your customers, your staff, can't access your normal systems. How does that affect you? Do you have backups? Do you have incident response plans? Do you have business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, those kinds of standard things that you should have? But do you have that? And then how does that process kick in? How do you keep the business running? If you have a business like that, it doesn't take too long, especially with smaller businesses, for it really to make a catastrophic situation and potentially take you out of business. We've seen that with other businesses where they have faced certain data breaches or ransomware attacks or whatever it is, and then they just can't get back online fast enough, whether that's a week or 2 weeks or a month or something like that. A lot of businesses can't afford to go those long-standing periods without being back and operational. So it's very interesting in that sense. It's also interesting because with public libraries or public institutions, public departments, going after a city and kind of the wrath that they might try to make you face, because obviously not every business has its own kind of police force that they can refer to. It's, just the normal police force. This is actually the government that you're going after. So again, always interesting. There's all kinds of thoughts going through my head about something like this, but what do you think? What do you think about this? Be interested to hear. Next article, cat DDoS threat groups sharply ramp up DDoS attacks.
No!
Researchers have spotted a recent surge in activity involving a unwary distributed denial of service DDoS botnet variant called cat DDoS. The attacks have targeted organizations across multiple sectors and include cloud vendors, communication providers, construction companies, scientific and research entities, and educational institutions in the US, France, Germany, Brazil, and China. The malware first surfaced last August and was a relatively prolific threat in September 2023. Cat DDoS dropped largely out of sight in December, prompting researchers tracking the threat at China's, I am not sure how to say that, but XLab, to assume the operators of malware may have pulled its plug. So thinking maybe they just kind of disappeared. In a report issued this week, this person, I'm not, again, sure how to say that, said, or this name said, its researchers have observed multiple gangs using cat DDoS variants during the past 3 months. The operators of the variants, which are being tracked under various names, including Rebirth Ltd, Kamara, and Cecilio Network, have so far exploited at least 80 different vulnerabilities in their new campaign, that group said. The vulnerabilities being exploited under the cat DDoS umbrella affected dozens of products and technologies, including active MQ servers, Apache Log4j, which has been around for a little bit, Cisco Linksys, Jenkins servers, and Netgear routers. It also says that many of the vulnerabilities are recent, meaning they were disclosed over the past year, but there are also numerous vulnerabilities that they're exploiting that are relatively old. So it talks about one that's 14 years old in Linksys firmware, one that is over a decade old in D-Link IP cameras, a remote code execution vulnerability in CTEC Sky routers from 2011. So pretty old in there as well. So one of the things that I always try to bring up on these episodes and with people just in general is that attackers go for the low-hanging fruit. They go for things that you should have already patched. And if you haven't patched them, and for instance, they're 10 years old, 14 years old, you've probably forgot about them. Honestly, if it's 14 years old and you still have a vulnerability that exists that should have been patched, you've probably forgot about that, which means that that's going to be relatively trivial to not only exploit, but continue to leverage and use to pivot to other areas of your network and other systems and those kinds of things. That is a very standard kind of way of thinking, especially with attackers. And so if you're not going to go after things like the low-hanging fruit that you should have patched 10 years ago, then you've probably been breached a few times. But that's why having a patch management cycle or patch management process that you're tracking, that you're paying attention to, that you are looking at those remediation timelines and making sure you don't have something that's 10 years old is really important. You can't just leave these things out in the wild forever. And if we know anything about vulnerabilities, just because something isn't vulnerable today doesn't mean it's not going to be vulnerable tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's not going to be vulnerable in a month, a year, 10 years. So I think the lesson here really is that first, start patching your old stuff. Go after those low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities and then work from there. Attackers don't want to work hard if they don't have to. I mean, technology professionals don't want to work hard if they don't have to. If they can automate things, if they can use technology, if they can do those kinds of things, that is standard in our world. So, yeah, patch your old stuff. Stop slacking and get it done. All right, next article here. Internet Archive disrupted by sustained and mean DDoS attack. The Internet Archive is experiencing sustained distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks, leading to service disruptions. Have you heard about this? Do you know what archive.org is? Do you know what the Wayback Machine is? The nonprofit research library, which provides free access to millions of historical documents, preserved websites, and media content, said the attacks began on May 26th and have continued since. Tens of thousands of fake information requests per second have been sent to the site, which have taken the service offline intermittently over the past 3 days, the Internet Archive revealed in a post on May 28th. So when you start getting these kinds of attacks especially, one of the things that you will realize is that it's a massive amount of traffic. Access to the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, which preserves the history of more than 866 billion web pages, has also been impacted. So if you don't know what the Wayback Machine is, basically it archives websites or versions of websites on certain days throughout the year. And if you go there, you'll be able to look back several years at different websites and what they actually looked like at a certain point in time. So you can see that kind of evolution of the websites, which is fascinating. I guess it could be good and bad, but it is a fascinating thing to see. And it's one of those things too, where you think about, if you put something out on the internet, it's going to be there forever because you have websites or archives like the Wayback Machine. But a lot of people use this service, and it is not, not great to see that. I wonder who is doing that and why they are doing it. DDoS attacks are sometimes difficult to block or prevent, but that's why you do put measures in place like web application firewalls and load balancers and all those kinds of things. But with botnets especially, and DDoS attacks, that's why you can't use things like blacklisting IP addresses, because these attackers will go onto AWS or go to these cloud providers and they will get a bunch of IPs, or they will take over or create botnets with a whole bunch of different systems, and they'll just, compromise a million different systems or something, and they'll just start pumping out requests to you. And that is a very difficult thing to stop, especially if you don't have a lot of funds to invest in things like that, invest in load balancers and these other technologies that help prevent these kinds of attacks. Next article here, Ransom Hub claims attack on Christie's, the world's wealthiest auction house. No! We talked about this before. The criminal group called itself Ransom Hub, calling itself Ransom Hub, claimed on Monday to have been behind a cyber attack targeting the British auction house Christie's. Now, if we remember back, if you didn't listen to this episode, first of all, you wouldn't have heard this. But if you go back to that episode where we originally talked about this, I called this. Ransomware attacks, in a lot of cases, you can read between the lines between when a company posts an announcement or they make an official statement about a cyber incident. A lot of times you can predict, if you start getting good at this, that something is a ransomware attack. A lot of times it is based on their statement and what they specifically say, how they phrase it, how they structure that statement. But it starts becoming really obvious if you start studying this stuff, or you understand what happens in these situations. You can start to just be like, okay, yeah, that's a ransomware attack for sure. This is one that I called. I mean, it's like good and bad. I called it. Hooray for me. Bad for them. A listing on Ransom Hub's darknet extortion site includes what the criminals are saying are samples of data stolen from Christie's, the world's largest auction house by revenue, whose clients include some of the world's wealthiest art collectors. So some of this, and the issue with this, remembering back to that article, was that first of all, Christie's has these extremely expensive things that they auction off. So artwork and things like that. But it was location of these artifacts and information about the clients who have the artifacts or the things that are being auctioned off. And so those are certainly concerning things in this particular business because they're trying to protect their clients' privacy with that data and who actually owns these artifacts, so they can't just go get robbed by somebody and walk off with a Picasso or something. Let's see here. There's a confirmation that the group behind the incident took some data from the Christie's network, including a limited amount of personal data relating to some of our clients. So basically what I was just saying. However, the auction house CEO said there was no evidence of any financial or transactional data related to our clients or to Christie's being taken or copied. So it sounds like not taking the customer's information as far as who bought a certain piece of art or artifact, but again, the people, the clients who are putting up the artifacts. Privately owned company, which said it made more than $6 billion last year through sales of artworks and luxury goods, previously sold the Leonardo da Vinci painting Salvator Mundi for a world record price of $450 million to a Saudi prince. The ransomware attack on Christie's comes amid a surge of incidents impacting organizations in the United Kingdom, with regulator data showing a record number of attacks reported to the country's Data Protection Authority in 2023. Next article, new North Korean hacking group identified by Microsoft. Microsoft has revealed the existence of a new North Korean threat actor dubbed Moonstone Sleet. Previously tracked as Storm 1789, a denomination used by the tech giant for uncategorized malicious activity clusters, Moonstone Sleet has been active since at least early August 2023. Until now, the threat actor demonstrated substantial overlap with Diamond Sleet, another North Korean group. One of the things that we see here, and we'll talk about it in this section here too, is this idea of reusing code, or specifically it says here, Moonstone Sleet was extensively reusing code from known Diamond Sleet malware like Comebacker and using well-established Diamond Sleet techniques to gain access to organizations, such as using social media to deliver Trojanized software, Microsoft explained in the report published on May 28th. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is these groups, they will use similar code or they will reuse code. Sometimes the groups shift. And a lot of times these linkages that you can find or trends that you can find can help tell you a lot about these different groups and who might be participating in these groups. Especially if a group kind of disbands, and that's in quotes, but then then a new group emerges, and you can kind of see similarities, because that can mean, well, the group didn't actually disband, they just kind of rebranded. It's just like a business. If a business doesn't maybe dissolve, they kind of rebrand themselves as a different business. Think of like Twitter and X. Similar to that. They didn't disband, they just rebranded as something else. Overlaps are common with the North Korean threat landscape, inside of which almost all threat groups work for the same cause, serving the regime. We certainly know that because North Korea is heavily controlled by their regime and by their leader and everything like that. So the internet access and all of those kinds of things, education, all of that stuff is very closely restricted or tightly restricted by their government. It says to compromise its victims' IT systems, Moonstone Sleet employs a combination of tried and tested new techniques, including setting up fake companies and fake job opportunities to engage with potential targets, deploying Trojanized versions of legitimate tools, and creating malicious games. We've seen that a lot out of North Korea, really going after job boards, after job seekers, after companies that are looking to hire employees, all those different things, and really trying to leverage that process or that system of employment to compromise systems. One of the earliest Moonstone Sleet strategies detected by Microsoft dates back to August 2023, when the threat actor was observed delivering a Trojanized version of PuTTY, an open source terminal emulator, via apps like LinkedIn and Telegram, as well as developer freelancing platforms. And they give an image here that kind of goes through the different process or different threat vectors that they use. So definitely check that image out in the article. This use of common social media platforms to deliver malicious payloads has been observed with other North Korean actors like Diamond Sleep. So again, we see kind of connections with different groups, and that's how we can kind of connect the dots back to where those groups belong. That's why we're able to see this a lot with these APT groups or groups, for instance, like this, several groups linked back to North Korea. So always an interesting article with North Korean techniques and the strategies that they're using to really go after their victims. But like everything, there are commonalities among different threat groups, and that's how we track them back to the source. So very interesting though, very interesting. So with that being said, that's the last article for today's episode of Cyber Threat Intel. Again, today is Thursday. It's May 30th, 2024, and this is episode number 43. If you want to find all the articles that we talked about today, make sure to go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com. That's where you can find all the articles and all the locations and platforms that we are hosting the show on. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this content in this episode. And that's going to wrap up this episode for this week. And I'll see you in the next one. See you later. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cybertraining Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.